You know the feeling. The test you studied years for. You walk in, you sit down, and you fail. Now imagine it's the one exam that decides your entire life. And you fail it. Again and again. 4 times. A poor village schoolteacher in southern China lived exactly that. His name was Hong Xiuquan, and his breakdown would become a war that killed more than 30 times the dead of the American Civil War. And you have almost certainly never heard of it. Ask most people for the bloodiest war of the 1800s, and they reach for something American or European. They're wrong. The deadliest conflict of the entire century happened in China, and it was started by a man who believed he was the younger brother of Jesus. Somewhere between 20 and 30 million people died. Some historians think far more. The American Civil War, by comparison, killed around 620,000. This killed 30 of those. So how did the world forget it? It began with one ruined man and a pamphlet. To feel the slip, you first have to feel the pressure underneath it. In old China, there was one road out of poverty, the imperial examination. Pass it, and you joined the scholar elite. Power, respect, your whole family lifted for generations. The same test for everyone, the great ladder up. But the ladder was almost entirely a trap. Of every 100 men who sat the lowest rung, only about 5 ever passed. The rest went home as nothing. Millions of clever, desperate men, told year after year that they did not matter. Hong was one of them. A brilliant boy, the pride of his Hakka village. A poor, looked-down-on minority who scraped together everything to send him. He sat the exam. He failed. He sat it again. He failed again. The whole village's hope rode on him and collapsed each time he walked home empty-handed. Then in 1837, after one more failure, something in him broke. Picture what that does to a person. You give it everything. Your family gives up everything for you, and a wall of old men you will never meet looks at your paper and decides, no, not you. You walk home past the neighbors to a family that sacrificed for nothing. And then you do it all again. You have felt a smaller version of this. The job, the school, the future that was supposed to be yours, telling you that you don't make the cut. Now stretch that over a life. That is where Hong was standing when his mind finally gave. He collapsed into a fever and didn't surface for days, some say 40. And inside the fever, he saw things. He was carried up into the sky. An old man with a long golden beard in a black dragon robe sat waiting. The old man cut Hong open, pulled out his organs, set new ones in their place, pressed a sword and a golden seal into his hands, and told him to go down and cleanse the world of demons. There was another figure beside them, a man Hong somehow understood to be his older brother. Then he woke up, with no idea what any of it meant. For 6 years, nothing. The meaning arrived in 1843. After his 4th and final failure, Hong picked up a thin Christian pamphlet a street preacher had pushed on him years before, a little book called Good Words to Admonish the Age. He had never really read it. This time he did, and the fever clicked into place. The old man with the golden beard? That was God, his father. The older brother? Jesus. Which made Hong himself God's second son, the younger brother of Jesus, sent to earth with a sword to destroy the demons. And the demons, he decided, were the rulers of China. Now, a failed scholar with visions is just a sad little story. It dies in the village. But Hong was preaching into a country already cracking apart. The Qing dynasty was rotting from the inside. Corruption everywhere. The population had exploded, the land could no longer feed it, and the south was full of starving people. And China had just been humiliated by Britain in the Opium War, beaten, forced open, its emperor exposed as weak. To millions with nothing left to lose, a man promising a heavenly kingdom where the poor finally mattered, did not sound like a madman. He sounded like hope. So how does one broken man's private delusion become a war? Slowly, then all at once. Hong's followers, the god worshippers, grew from a handful to thousands, then tens of thousands. They smashed idols. They shared everything they owned. And in 1851, they declared open war on the empire, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. A whole state built on one man's fever dream. The Qing sent armies to crush it. The armies lost. And what this rebellion did next would shake the dynasty to its roots. In 1853, the Taiping took Nanjing, one of the greatest cities in all of China. They renamed it the Heavenly Capital, and Hong moved into a palace as its heavenly king. At its height, his kingdom held much of southern China and ruled some 30 million people. They banned opium. They banned the binding of women's feet. They held the land in common. For one strange moment, the impossible looked real. A man who had failed a village exam now ruled a third of a country. But behind the palace walls, his kingdom was already turning on itself. Hong withdrew. He stopped governing and sank into his palace, his scriptures, and a vast harem, while his commanders turned on each other for control. A single night of purging killed thousands of the movement's own leaders. The kingdom that had promised paradise became one more machine for making people suffer. And out in the countryside, the true horror was not the battles at all, because this war did not kill mostly with swords. It killed with hunger and with disease. For over a decade, the fighting ground back and forth across the richest farmland in China. The crops failed. The trade stopped. The famine came. Whole regions simply emptied. People starved by the millions and died of plague by the millions. 14 years. 20 to 30 million human beings, an entire America's worth of dead when the United States itself held barely 30 million. And almost none of them ever saw Hong's face. By 1862, the empire struck back. A Qing army wrapped itself around the heavenly capital and began to squeeze. The siege dragged on for nearly 2 years. Inside the walls, the food ran out. And Hong, the younger brother of Jesus, told his starving people they had nothing to fear. Heaven would provide. God would send down manna from the sky. It never came. As the city slowly starved, Hong went out into the palace gardens, gathered wild weeds, and called them the manna of heaven. In June 1864, he ate them, and he died. Whether it was the weeds, or poison, or his own hand, no one knows for certain. Weeks later, the walls broke. Qing soldiers poured into the heavenly capital and killed almost everyone left inside, tens of thousands of them, in a matter of days. The kingdom that was born in a fever dream ended in fire and silence. 14 years after it began, the deadliest civil war in human history was finally over. And the man at the center of it was already gone, buried somewhere in the gardens where he had eaten weeds and called them the bread of heaven. We remember the wars that fit our maps, the ones close to home, in the textbooks we were handed as children. 20 million people vanished from this one, and most of us were never even told their names. But sit a moment with the small thing buried at the center of it. One man failed a test, only a test, and he was told over and over that it made him nothing. The distance between a single broken mind and a collapsing world is thinner than we let ourselves believe. Hong found the crack in his, at the exact moment an entire empire was ready to break along its own.